Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of the Riggies podcast. Today we've got a very special guest, Chris Oliver, the Chief Marketing Officer of Trucker Path. Those of you that are familiar with Trucker Path, I am sure it has alleviated a lot of your pain points and bottlenecks when navigating the challenges of the road. And for those of you that don't, you're in for a real treat. And I'm very confident the technology that they are building is going to help you get from point A to point B in a more efficient and costly manner. So thanks, Chris, for joining us. It's been a pleasure doing some research on you, and I know we actually have some of our lots listed on your platform, and we've had nothing but great success with that. So if you kind of want to start, just give us a little bit of a background, kind of where your career started off and how it led into Trucker Path and just the trucking industry and in the role that you're in right now.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me, Dave. I appreciate it. Been looking forward to talking with y'all. I've been working in this industry for almost 30 years now. Just kind of happened that way. Out of college, I started off doing market research. Just happened to be at the company I was at, focused on transportation loosely. One study leads to another, and next thing you know, people think you're smart, and then you get a real job at a real company doing something, and it's grown. So I think probably the most notable position I really started in the industry with was pre-pass, the waste station bypass system. We weren't called CROs back then, but I was the first CRO there, from no revenue to when we sold the company for a pretty nice amount of money 4 years later. After that, I was one of the original C-suite members and owners of a company called Zonar, a telematics company up in Seattle. Did real well there. We enjoyed it. We worked a lot of different verticals, including trucking. We were actually the first OEM telematics platform ever deployed with Freightliner. So we were pretty proud of that. After that, I was with Cargomatic for a little bit, which was banded or branded the Uber for freight before Uber Freight existed, and learned a little bit there around local carriage and hauling in marketplaces for freight. And now here I'm at Trucker Path, growing this business and doing what we can to make a day in the life a little bit easier for drivers.
Awesome, man. That's good. So before we dive in, you got a dog in this March Madness fight at all? I just got my bracket in right before this podcast kicked off, so I barely made the cutoff line. But I don't know what your claim is or alma mater. But
I don't have a big claim. I did actually play basketball, so I love it. I've been a Duke fan my whole life, so gotta love them. I know you either loved it or hate Duke, but I'm one of those.
Yeah.
I went with Purdue. That's where my bracket landed. Just
nice, man.
Looking pretty strong.
That's good.
Big man.
They do
for you in college.
Yep. No, that's exciting. I think I went with UConn again this year, but I'm going to get a lot of hate from my Houston coworkers and stuff. Sure. And I'm in the wrong market to say that too loud. So, but anyway, so give us a brief overview of Trucker Path and what it is for those of our listeners that don't have that app or haven't had any experience with the.
Yeah, happy to. I'll kind of go through the evolution because it's pretty neat. It was started about 10 years ago. By some developers who had friends who were drivers who said they had a hard time finding truck stops. And so they initially started off just with a map with as many truck stops as they could figure out how to plot on the map. And it just really started out with friends. It turned out they were Russian. So they were working with their Russian driver friends, and it grew within that community. And then, of course, they talk, and it started to grow from there. But where it really started to catch hold and become interesting was somewhere along the line, a user said, geez, thanks. We really like having all these truck stops. It sure would be neat if you had pricing for fuel. So those original developers learned of Opus and learned how to attach pricing to those truck stops. But what's more important there was a user asked for something and the company responded. And that's really how Trucker Path has grown. You fast forward now, we're up to over 500,000 POIs or points of interest that are on the app.
Wow.
That's the majority of those have been cultivated from the driver community. We have an entire team of people that take the recommendations and requests in from the users on a daily basis. They say, hey, I had some great tacos in Phoenix and I could park my truck. This place should be on the map. Those requests come in all the time. Wow. We vet to make sure it's really a taco place and not some place we wouldn't want to have on the app. And if it all lines up within a day or two, that it becomes a dot, and then the ratings and reviews start. So that grew, and then over time, parking became a question. Said, geez, this is great, and we like going to have tacos where we can park. So we then started geofencing everywhere we knew that a truck could park legally and safely. So we're up to 20,000, little over 20,000 locations where that is today, and they're all geofenced, you know. And we ask drivers when they arrive, just look around. Is the lot full? Are there some spaces available, or are there a lot of spaces available? Which seems kind of vanilla, you know, generally speaking. But when you got a million people telling you that all the time, it's pretty accurate. And when you're a driver using Trucker Path for the first time and you're approaching a location and our app says 5 minutes ago, a fellow driver said there were a lot of spaces available, and you pull up and there are a lot of spaces available, you're like, oh my God, it works. So the next time when you're the person we ask the question, you're happy to contribute because you're helping people out. So I've been making jokes the last month or so that Trucker Pass should have been called hooking a brother up, because that's really what we do. Is the drivers feed each other and feed the information back and forth. So there's a parking scenario. We do the same thing at way stations. Are they open or closed? And then we also keep track of how long it takes to get through the queue. So you know if it's open or closed and about how long it's going to take you to get through. We also do a shipping docks. You know, Trucker Pass is a very popular navigation tool, since we take into account truck heights and weight limits. And so we route people to where trucks enter, not the front door of the building like most do. So you really go where the trucks go. And then when that geofence gets broken, we ask them, are there gates? Do you need an appointment? Is there a guard? Can you park there? Are there restrooms? Everything that a driver needs to know. And again, because we're really built on that crowdsourcing of information, the drivers share it with us so that the next guy can be helped out. And last I checked, we were up over 160,000 shipping docks that we have on the app now too. So it really comes from, you know, we've got a lot of techies in this business.
Sure.
And the drivers make recommendations all the time to us, and they know we respond. So it's really like this symbiotic relationship between the user base and our geeks who build what they want. And then we just keep trying to refine that over and over again.
Yeah. I think, you know, backing up to one comment you made about the truckers giving you the feedback, I think you actually listening to the user is just so important in understanding the driver and like the way they think, the way they operate, the psychology behind these guys, and really taking that into how you guys advance and develop your app and your platform. There's not a whole lot of people out there doing that, actually listening to the guy behind the wheel and taking his word for it or just hearing what he has to say. But that's great. I mean, kudos to you guys for really showing that level of appreciation and empathy for these guys behind the wheel. That's kind of what we do here at Riggy's. That's why we design our lots for the driver behind the wheel with ingress and egress and all the analysis we go through and that sort of stuff. So that's awesome. And I was looking on y'all's website too, and it looks like you also have kind of expanded into options for carriers and for brokers, in addition to just the kind of map or navigation tool for fuel and way stations and truck parking.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we've got, you know, a lot of different offerings here. We've got a lot of technical people and who love to develop new things. So we offer a TMS that for carriers and for brokers. And many of our programs lend themselves well to fleets. One in particular that's become really popular in this last year is, you know, we creatively called it Trucker Paths for Fleets, and it's really like a white labeled version of our app. You know, I believe most companies should have an app for their drivers, and it's not cheap. It takes time and to both build things like that and maintain it. So what we did last year was we decided to white label it. So a fleet can actually subscribe to Trucker Path and paint the app their color. So when you open up the app, the splash screen is the company truck and the company logo. So it really feels like it's the company app. But then when the driver gets into it, it's the full Trucker Path experience. And then that's also integrated with many TMS platforms. So essentially, you know, the easy way I say it is when the dispatcher or operator back in the home office hits go and sends a job to a driver, it all arrives right on the fleet's version of the Trucker Path app. So they use our navigation. They're able to find parking locations. They're able to find fuel discounts. Just the entire experience just becomes part of that fleet, which, you know, big fleets have major turnover rates. You know, 100% is not an uncommon turnover ratio for a big fleet. To take care of the drivers a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah, that's awesome. So like what kind of trends or like user experience patterns have you found when designing the apps for truckers?
You know, the neat thing is that the company that I worked for, well, we acquired Trucker Path in 2017 from the original development team. And our parent company was originally founded developing social media platforms and gaming for mobile apps. So that's a kind of our secret sauce. That's why our app is solid.
Yeah.
works the way you expect it to. And I think we're about the same age. I'm sure you open up a lot of apps and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? And how does this work? That doesn't happen with Trucker Path because it's built upon, years of structuring social media and gaming platforms. So the buttons are where you expect them to be. And when you push it, it does what you expect it to. And I always, I tell them they're sorcerers or magicians all the time because, hell, when I was born, we didn't have any technology. I didn't have any technology going through college. But when I do stuff, it just works. And I think that's part of our secret sauce.
That's awesome. So in relation to just kind of like truck parking and hours of service, how have you seen truckers be more efficient by using Trucker Path, like with their hours of service and being more strategic in planning their routes, and kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a big, obviously, I'm preaching to the choir. You know what a big deal the parking shortage is and finding available parkings. It's a real challenge. And I actually did a study a couple of years ago, and I believe it was 45 minutes was the estimated amount of time that a driver spends a day looking for parking. That's like 8%, I think 8% of your daily allotment of hours for hours of service wasted looking for a place to stop. So that's not good. So that's kind of where we come in and you come in. That's, we are the people to help find parking and do it much more quickly and even proactively. We can make a reservation a day ahead when you're going to be arriving in Katy, Texas, and you've got a spot to park and you save that extra 45 minutes of driving. That's a lot of miles. That's a lot of money back in the pocket of the driver who's getting paid by the mile, and the whole load moves that much further down the road. So using the technology and services like yours that are available is paramount. I mean, imagine if you gained 8% productivity on every trucker in America, no one would ever talk about a driver shortage again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you there. As you and I were talking before we started, my old man turned 75 this month and still drives over the road between Minnesota and Washington State. And I mean, almost every time he has a route, or load going out to the West Coast, he's got to stop an hour and a half to 2 hours prior to where he actually wants to be due to the truck parking shortage or, the lack thereof. And I think what we've noticed is one of our locations in Katy that we have on y'all's app. It's, just surrounded by distribution. There's DCs everywhere. So I can't tell you how many times I've had truckers find us through Trucker Path, book a spot, get gate access, all without me ever making any point of contact. And it's when I get to the lot the next morning or wake up and start my day, open up our dashboard, I'm like, oh, I had 3 guys park at our yard. And I give them all a call, welcome to Riggy's. They parked between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., whatever it may be, all without making point of contact with me, but like asking them, how'd you hear about us? Oh, it was Trucker Path. Well, the review process within Trucker Path is very valuable because it's word of mouth, and word of mouth in this industry is very powerful. But yeah, I think just like having these types of offerings and the usability and just, I myself have looked at Trucker Path. I was like, man, if next time I take a road trip somewhere, I kind of want to stop at these truck stops, like intentionally, because these are my people. So yeah, that's awesome.
So I do too. Every time I take a trip somewhere, I'm like, hey, we got to stop over at that place. They're part of our fuel network, or they've got great reviews. I just want to walk in and see what it's like. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So talk about any recent updates or new features that y'all have introduced to kind of enhance your offerings. Anything recently?
Yeah, we've got a lot going on, and it's really kind of a big evolutionary step for Trucker Path these days. Historically, we've been a search tool. I need to find a truck stop. I need to find parking, people searching, and that's phenomenal. And we obviously care about that tremendously, and we'll keep that going. Like when I joined the company a few years ago, my vision was to do everything we could to make a day in the life of a driver a little bit better. I've been in the industry for quite a while, like I mentioned earlier, and I've always believed if we collectively as an industry take care of the drivers, everything else will work itself out.
I love that. Yeah.
The big companies, those are big companies. They know what they're doing. They're going to make a profit. They're going to do what they need to do. But ultimately, that grassroots level is essential. So I'm really, honestly, one of the reasons why I'm here is I love the notion of making life easier for drivers. And that's what we're doing. So what we did was we sat down and just really sit down, think about a day in the life of a driver. What do they need to do? And a lot of those itches we already scratch with the search capabilities we have. So we started to build a marketplace. So, what can we do? The terminology I use most often is I want to bring big fleet benefits to the little guy. So what are those? That's fuel discounts. We all know that big fleets don't pay retail prices for fuel, but a lot of operators do, right?
Yep.
There's insurance. The average cost of an insurance premium for the vehicle, casualty, liability, et cetera, that's required of a truck driver is tremendous. I don't think most people realize it's, $1,000, $1,500 a month premium is not at all unusual. That's a lot, a whole lot. So what we're doing is we're building a marketplace of all these items, services the drivers have to buy, and kind of coagulating or aggregating the base into one big buying power. And the first step has been fuel. And it's every day someone fuels almost. They buy over 100 gallons in a pop. $400 or $500 a day is a major expense. So about a year ago, we started a fuel discount network. It's real simple. Drivers have a wallet. It's in the app. They can attach a credit card to it or their bank account to pay cash directly or a debit card. And we negotiate discounts for them all around the country. We're up about 1,300 locations now, averaging discounts over 20 cents a gallon. And all they really have to do is tell us, where they want to go, about how much fuel they want to use. When they arrive, they touch a button they say, hey, I'm here to check in after that geofence is broken. And we give them a few codes that they have to punch into the pump. And it's just like punching those codes in is just like swiping a card.
Jeez.
After the codes are done, they put the nozzle in, dispense the fuel. When they hang the nozzle up, they have the receipt in their phone in a few seconds. And everything flows just as it should, so that they save a nice amount of money. Not uncommon to be $40 or $50 a filling. You do that every day, that's a lot of money over the course of the month that we save for them. So that's the beginning of this being the big fleet benefits to the small guys that we're doing. And that's it. Stay tuned. There's a whole lot more coming this year and next.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talking about what's coming. Let's kind of talk about that a little bit. Anything that you can share, I guess. Like, what is the future vision for Trucker Path, and any upcoming developments or expansions that you can kind of share with us?
So on that marketplace side, we'll be bringing the insurance fix to the market. I can't talk too much about the specifics, but
sure,
big pay for insurance differently than owner operators do. And what I'm trying to structure is a plan that'll let owner operators pay for their insurance like the big fleets do, on a per mile basis, perhaps on a daily basis. But just paying a big monthly blanket premium is something that we're hoping to alleviate. So that's a big deal. The other thing is we're a tech company like everybody else, AI, right? Everybody's talking about that. We haven't touched on it yet, but we have a sister app called Truckloads, and it's our load board. It's about the fourth largest load boarder in the industry, free for drivers to use. And our techies are working hard on injecting AI into that, so that gone will be the days of typing in where you are and where you want to go and all of that. You'll just talk to it like a person. Say, hey, I'm in Phoenix and I'd like to go to Houston and I'd like to make 270 a mile. What you got? And it'll tell you and say, hey, the load 3 looks pretty good, but I don't think I want to do it for 270. I need 280 a mile. Hold on a second. The AI will negotiate that deal in the background and come back and talk to you just like a virtual assistant. So there's a few iterations to get to that point where it's fluid, but it's coming, and I'm pretty excited about it. So there's a whole lot of neat things coming.
That's killer. Yeah. I love y'all's just emphasis on putting money back in the driver's pocket or saving them money where you can. Cause I agree, you look back at, if you just look at the transportation industry as a whole, I think it's like 96, 97% of carriers have less than 20 trucks, whatever depending upon 15 to 20 or less, whatever it may be. So those are the guys that are really getting hit hard with the fuel and the insurance and everything you're talking about, and the loads as well. So I think that's cool. You guys are focusing on that by trying to help them out and alleviate some of those financial stressors. So just, kind of looking at the trucking industry as a whole, the current state of it, kind of what's your perspective and as far as where we're at? I know we've kind of been in this freight trough for a while. I've started to see some things tick towards the positive trend, but kind of what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's been a rough few years for sure. COVID was what it was, and then after COVID, things started to get a little bit crazy. For the spot market in particular, $4 a mile wasn't uncommon, and at that time, fuel prices were pretty low too. So it was a real feast period. And basic economics shows when there's low barriers to entry and a feast period like that, you have a lot of new entrants to the market, and we had a lot of new entrants to the market over about a 12-month period. And then reality struck. It felt like in 10 minutes, but it was over the course of 90 days, maybe a little bit longer. Spot rates dropped almost, 35, 40%, and fuel prices almost doubled. So all that extra capacity then in the market was in a real bad position, and most of it is exited now. So, that was 2.5 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
In my experience over 30 years, it's about a 3-year pendulum. It kind of goes this way for a year and a half, and it takes about a year and a half to go this way. And it just kind of swings back and forth. So, just from that basic observation, it feels like we should be moving in the right direction. And then you take a little bit more scientific approach and listen to the economists and look at the major indicators and indices across the industry. And things are turning up a little bit. They're not going back to $4 a mile and craziness like that overnight, but they're moving back towards a place where it's a little bit more comfortable for everybody, and fuel prices have come down. So, it's hard when you're in the industry, especially as a newcomer to the industry, and you see, these massive sways. But over the course of decades, it really kind of flows in a pretty constant pendulum back and forth. And as a business leader, you just need to be prepared to weather the storms.
Yeah. Yeah. That we've, in our lots, we've been able to maintain, right at about 100% occupancy through the trenches here. We've been fortunate enough in that, but I think a lot of these guys too that I've talked with, they, majority of the ones that have stayed on site throughout this time, and still have some loads, they're not hauling as much as they used to, but, they've been through this before. So they know, save, when the getting's good, get it, save for the stormy days and ride it out. So I think, from the feedback I've been getting from the guys in our lots is things are starting to kind of tick upwards and that sort of stuff. So that's good to see.
Yep. Yeah. We're seeing the same thing on this side too. Number of users increasing back again. And even on our load board, we're seeing the rate per miles, starting to trend up nicely in a controlled way, not a massive volatility. So I think things are looking good. Now, if I knew when it was all going to be good again, I'd write a book and retire. So I don't know. Nobody knows really, but
yeah.
I think all the indicators are that the worst is behind us.
Yeah, I agree. So what's your thoughts on the current state of truck parking, and kind of the everyday difficulties of an average trucker?
Well, like we talked about earlier, it's a challenge, and not only is it a challenge because of just finding a place to park, but you can't have parking everywhere, and it's like a chicken or the egg challenge. You can build lots all over, and you guys are doing a great job of creating a really nice concentrated position, but not everybody goes through Texas. Not everybody goes where you're going, and you can't build lots everywhere, but everybody is all the time. And you can't force everybody to be somewhere at the same time. So it's a real difficult challenge. And what I've been saying now for a couple of years is what's most important is the discoverability, making sure that people can find the parking places because they exist, but they're not really easy to find all the time. That's where we step in. That's where you guys step in to when it's visible, they're filled, right? You just said, you're on close to 100% capacity on a regular basis. That's because they can find you and you've got great locations, and I think there's two sides of the coin. A, we definitely need more parking places. And B, people need to find them. So I've advocated the addition of extra parking capacity for quite a while. And then equally, if not more importantly, was, an open exchange of information so that people can actually find where those parking places are.
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed, a lot of the existing lots today, it's a pretty fragmented industry still. They're very hard to find, almost to the point you got to pull up Google Maps and find what looks like a truck lot and then zoom in and take your little Google guy and drop him on the street and zoom in and see if you can find a phone number zip tied to a chain link fence. And if you're lucky, that's the lot owner. But more often than not, they're just not marketed well. They're not listed well. They're kind of off the beaten path and they're not strategically placed where these guys want to be. Um, a lot of times we found that they kind of fell into the truck parking space. A guy lives on site. He had 2 trucks for himself, and he parked his brother-in-law. And the next thing you know, his brother-in-law had a buddy, and his buddy had a buddy. And fast forward, 2-3 years, now he's got 200 trucks on his lot. It's not a business he wants to scale. Maybe he has 20, 30 spots available, but he's not trying to create a truck parking business. He kind of fell into it. And a lot of those yards they're all over the place in the country, and they're very hard to find. So how do you view what we're doing at Riggy's in terms of solving the truck parking problem?
I think it's great. We talked about it earlier. There's a huge need, and you guys are doing it nicely. Like you said, there's a lot of places where somebody threw up a cheap fence around a field and called it parking. No lights, no cameras, no security, just a place. It'll work in a pinch, but you guys got a way better approach. Really nice facilities, gated and lit, monitored, people on staff, people there to help as well. I mean, across the board, that's good. Like I said earlier, I'm all about taking care of the drivers. A good night's sleep it's pretty important, not only just for a person's sanity and mental well-being, but they're driving big, heavy trucks, long distances all day long. So to make sure they can rest nicely in a comfortable, secure place, it's easy to find and discover. That's what we got to do. We owe it to that. It's the circulatory system of our economy. We owe it to them to help to treat them right.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was Forbes put out an article, maybe it was, 2 years ago or something. I think it is if every owner operator in the country went on strike for 3 days, all the grocery stores in America would be empty. It would just take 3 days, and that's it. Scary to think about, but it also just drives home the level of appreciation and respect that these guys go through, that we should have for them as kind of the backbone of our workforce. And you go back to COVID, like you were saying, I mean, they were considered essential workers, right? Because they were them in the medical field. I mean, pretty important trades there. You don't want to skip over.
Yeah, the medical field can't do much. They don't have any medicine to give you.
Yeah.
I often talk. I try to play golf, so you often go get paired up with people, and it's inevitable by the third hole somebody's going to ask you what you do, right?
Yep.
For years I'm like, yeah, I do tech. What kind of tech? And I'd say trucking, and everybody gets that stink trucking. They get that stink face for truckers, and it pissed me off. I'm like, God, what's the problem? Like, what do you have against truckers? Those big trucks, they're stinky and they get in the way. I'm like, well, they're way cleaner than your car, for one. And I've talked to probably 50 drivers who've driven 1 million miles and never had a ticket or a crash. I've never met one, four-wheel drive car driver that could say anything close to that. Yeah. And that ball that you just shanked off into the woods, they brought that to you. And those clubs that you can't hit, they brought that too. So
you can't hit.
Think about it. Because you're not doing anything in this country. So think about that. It's been I've had that conversation 30 times, and I get more passionate about it. So never thought I would say it, but thank COVID for the fact that finally truckers are getting the recognition they deserve.
Yeah, that's great. Great point. So here's kind of a fun one before we kind of wrap it up. If you could go on a road trip with any famous person in a truck, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh boy, gosh, you got all the giving questions today.
That's a fun one.
I just had this conversation not too long ago with my son, which is interesting to have a 16-year-old's perspective on the world versus mom. It was pretty interesting. For me, I go back and forth between somebody I think would be super fun to ride with, George Carlin, for example. How great would that be to hang out with him for a day? I don't know if I want to drive, but I'd love to just shoot fat, and that'd be hilarious. And then I also go to some political figures. When I was growing up, President Reagan was a pretty big part of our life and our economy and how our country kind of switched gears. I'd love to have that opportunity. And then I think I'd probably go back even further, back to pick one of our founding fathers, because I'm just regularly dumbfounded by the foresight that they had and the way our country was established, and how, it ain't perfect. God knows it's not perfect, but man, those founding principles, that's just incredible foresight and thought. And Sometimes I think, man, those guys were geniuses, and sometimes I think, man, those guys got lucky as hell. I don't know what it is, but I'd love to pick their brain for a while.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome, man. Well, I know March Madness is about to tip off here, so we can go check our brackets here in a bit. But again, Chris, just want to thank you so much for everything you and the team are doing over at Trucker Path. We got 3 lots under development right now. One in Dallas, one in San Antonio, one in Memphis, and all 3, I assure you, will be on your platform. Just the feedback and response that we've got from placing our newest lot in west of Houston, just outside of Katy, on Trucker Path has been tremendous for us, and the reviews keep pouring in. So we appreciate everything you do. I know our listeners and those guys behind the wheel appreciate you by putting them first when it comes to saving on insurance and fuel, and just really trying to help these guys out. That way they can keep us clothed and a roof over our head and fed and all that sort of stuff. So I always say, if it wasn't for truckers, we'd be hungry, homeless, and naked. So I'm glad we both have polos on for this podcast. But but yeah, thanks again, man. And again, if you want to follow us, you can always check us out, Riggy's Parking, and we are on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I think that's all of them. So thanks again, Chris, and we'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed it, Dave. Thanks.
You bet.